Mike Turner wasn't looking for any recognition when he fixed that little girl's bike. As a single dad running a small-town auto repair shop, he was just doing what felt right. The bike was special, custom-made for a child with a disability, and the repairs would have cost more than most families could afford. So he did it for free, just like his father would have done. He thought that would be the end of it. But 3 days later, the quiet morning air was split by the sound of helicopter blades. As the sleek black aircraft descended onto the empty lot next to his shop, Mike had no idea his simple act of kindness was about to change his life forever. Could a single moment of compassion really bridge the gap between two completely different worlds? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning sun hadn't quite cleared the mountains when Mike Turner's alarm buzzed at 5:30 a.m. He allowed himself exactly one deep breath before swinging his legs over the side of his bed, the old springs creaking in familiar protest. The house was quiet, except for the gentle hum of the ancient heating system his father had installed decades ago. Mike's morning routine was a well-choreographed dance through the modest 2-bedroom house. First stop, Sarah's lunchbox. The pink container was slightly dented on one corner from the time she'd dropped it, defending another kid from a bully. Mike smiled at the memory as he packed her sandwich, peanut butter and banana, cut diagonally just the way she liked it. His daughter might only be 11, but she had her mother's heart. The thought of Claire sent a familiar ache through his chest. 4 years had passed since the accident, but some mornings the grief felt as fresh as yesterday. He pushed the feeling aside, focusing instead on tucking a small note into Sarah's lunch, just like Claire used to do. Be brave, be kind, be you, love, Dad. In the kitchen, Mike could see the stack of bills through the dim morning light. They sat on the counter. Like unwelcome guests, their red final notice stamps, visible even in the half-dark. The mortgage payment was due next week, and the shop's income had been down since the new dealership opened in the next town over. But Sarah would never know about any of that. He'd promised Claire he'd give their daughter the stability she deserved. "Dad?" Sarah's voice drifted from the hallway. She appeared in her favorite purple pajamas, her dark hair a mess of tangles. "You're thinking too loud again." Mike chuckled. "Just planning the day, kiddo. You're up early." "Science test today," she said, climbing onto a kitchen stool. "Did you know that helicopters stay up because of something called lift? Is that so?" Mike started mixing pancake batter, their Tuesday tradition. "Tell me more about that." Sarah launched into an explanation about air pressure and blade angles, her hands moving animatedly as she spoke. Mike listened, marveling at how she could make complex things sound simple, just like her mother had. The first pancake was just hitting the griddle when the phone rang. Mike checked the caller ID, Pete's Parts Supply. His stomach tightened. He knew what this call would be about. "Morning, Pete," he answered, trying to keep his voice light for Sarah's benefit. "Mike," Pete's gravelly voice was apologetic. "About that parts order. I'll have the payment by Friday," Mike promised, turning away from Sarah. "Just need to finish up a couple of big jobs." "You're a good mechanic, Mike, but I can't keep extending credit. The new dealership's pushing hard for exclusive contracts." Mike watched the pancake begin to bubble. "I understand. Friday, Pete. You have my word." After hanging up, he felt Sarah's eyes on him. She had Claire's intuition too, always sensing when something was wrong. He forced a smile. "How about chocolate chips in these pancakes?" Sarah's face lit up, but her eyes held a wisdom beyond her years. "Only if you have some too, Dad. You shouldn't just watch me eat the good stuff." The morning continued its familiar pattern. Breakfast, school prep, the careful arrangement of Sarah's dark curls into what she called her thinking braid. As Mike helped her with the final touches, he caught their reflection in the hallway mirror. They made quite a pair, her small frame against his tall one, her olive skin a shade darker than his, both of them wearing identical expressions of concentration. "All set?" he asked, handing her the pink lunchbox. Sarah nodded, then hesitated. "Dad, are we okay?" Mike knelt down to her level, something that was getting harder to do as she grew taller. "We're more than okay, kiddo. We're the Turners. And what do Turners do? We keep going," she said with a small smile. "No matter what." "That's right." He hugged her tight, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. "Now go show that science test who's boss." As Sarah headed for the bus stop, Mike watched from the porch. The morning sun was finally cresting the mountains, painting the sky in shades of promise. In an hour, he'd open the shop, face the bills, and figure out how to keep their small world turning. But for now, he just watched his daughter walk away, her pink lunchbox swinging, ready to face whatever the day might bring. The shop's sign caught the morning light. Turner Auto Repair, Esther 1985. His father's handiwork, the letters, slightly faded, but still proud. Mike touched the worn wood as he unlocked the front door, a morning ritual that connected him to all the Turners who'd stood in this spot before. Whatever challenges lay ahead, this was home. This was their legacy. And somehow he'd find a way to keep it alive. The morning rush had just died down when Mike heard the distinct sound of wheels dragging across pavement. He looked up from under the hood of Mrs. Henderson's Volvo to see a girl about Sarah's age struggling with a bicycle at the shop's entrance. The bike was unlike anything he'd ever seen, a complex system of modified gears and custom-welded supports that spoke of both engineering ingenuity and heavy use. "Can I help you?" Mike called out, wiping his hands on a shop rag. The girl looked up, determination written across her face. She wore leg braces that caught the sunlight, and her grip on the handlebars showed the same kind of stubborn resolve he often saw in Sarah. "My bike's not working right," she said. "Mum says we should take it to the specialty shop in the city, but—" She glanced down at the bike. "This is my freedom. I can't wait that long." Mike approached slowly, professional interest piqued by the bike's unique design. "I'm Mike Turner. Want to tell me what's going on with it?" "I'm Emma," she replied, brightening at his interest. "The pedals keep slipping, and the balance compensator isn't responding like it should." She demonstrated the problem, and Mike could hear the subtle wrongness in the mechanism's rhythm. He knelt to examine the custom gear system. The engineering was impressive, a sophisticated arrangement that allowed the bike to adjust automatically to Emma's movements, helping her maintain balance despite her mobility challenges. But wear and misalignment had taken their toll. "May I?" he asked, gesturing to the bike. Emma nodded, and Mike began a careful inspection. Years of experience had taught his fingers to read mechanical problems like Braille. Whoever designed this knew what they were doing. "Mom did," Emma said proudly. "She's an engineer, but she's been really busy lately with her company, and the specialty shop that usually handles the maintenance closed last month." Mike nodded, continuing his examination. The problems were clear now. Worn bearings in the compensator system, misaligned gears from regular use, and a chain that needed precise tensioning. Parts alone would cost several $100s, not counting the specialized labor. He glanced at Emma, saw the hope in her eyes, and thought of Sarah. "Let me make a few calls," he said. "I might have to order some parts, but I think we can get you rolling again." Emma's face fell slightly. "How much will it cost?" "Mom left me some money, but—" Mike saw her hand tighten on a small purse, and something in his chest tightened, too. He thought of the bills on his counter, of Pete's warning about credit, of all the reasons he should quote a fair price. Then he thought of his father, of all the times he'd watched him help people just because it was right. "Tell you what," he said. "Let me take a closer look first. Sometimes these things aren't as bad as they seem." He spent the next hour examining every aspect of the bike while Emma sat nearby, explaining how different parts worked. Her knowledge was impressive, clearly inherited from her engineer mother. Mike found himself enjoying the technical conversation, even as his mental calculations confirmed his initial assessment of the work needed. The shop door chimed, and Sarah burst in back from school. She stopped short at the sight of Emma and the unusual bike. "Whoa," she breathed. "That's amazing," Emma beamed. "Want to see how it works?" As the girls fell into animated conversation, Mike retreated to his office with the bike's technical drawings. The work would be challenging, requiring precision and specialized parts. He looked at his books, ran the numbers again. The parts alone would strain his credit with Pete. Labor would be another story. Through the office window, he could see Emma showing Sarah how the balance system worked, both girls laughing as they discussed the mechanics. The sound reminded him of Claire's laugh, of her belief that sometimes the right thing cost everything and nothing at all. Mike walked back out to the shop floor. "Emma," he said, "I can fix your bike. It'll take a few days to get the parts and do the work right, but—" He took a deep breath. "No charge." "What?" Emma's eyes widened. "But Mom said it would cost hundreds of dollars. Consider it a professional courtesy," Mike said. "One engineer's daughter to another." He thought of Claire again, of her passion for fixing things, for making the world work better. Sometimes things are worth more than money. Sarah was watching him with that knowing look she'd inherited from her mother. She knew what this meant for their tight budget, but her smile told him she understood. Turners kept going, no matter what, and sometimes that meant helping others do the same. Emma looked at the bike, then back at Mike. "Are you sure?" "Absolutely," he said, "but I do have one condition." He grinned. "You have to explain to me exactly how that balance compensator works. I've never seen engineering quite like this." Emma's face lit up, and for the next hour she walked Mike through the bike's systems. With the expertise of someone who had lived with the technology, Sarah joined in, asking questions that showed she'd inherited her mother's technical mind. The afternoon sun slanted through the shop windows, casting long shadows across the floor, but none of them noticed the time passing. As Emma finally prepared to leave, promising to return tomorrow to check on the progress, she paused at the door. "Mr. Turner, thank you. Most people, they don't understand how important this bike is. It's not just transportation, it's freedom," Mike finished for her. "I understand." And he did. Sometimes freedom came with wheels, sometimes with wings, but it always came from people willing to help each other find it. After Emma left, Sarah helped him close up the shop. "Dad," she said, arranging tools in their proper places, "Mom would be proud of you." Mike looked at his daughter, at the wisdom in her young face, and knew that some repairs fixed more than just machines. "Thanks, kiddo," he said softly. "I think she'd be proud of both of us." The next morning came too early, heralded by the insistent buzz of Mike's phone. It was Carol from the bank, her text message diplomatic but firm. Just a reminder about Friday's mortgage payment. Mike stared at the ceiling, mental calculations running like engine diagnostics. Between Emma's bike parts and the regular bills, something would have to give. He found Sarah already up, homework spread across the kitchen table. "The interest on my math problems isn't as high as the ones on your bills," she said, not looking up from her textbook. "I checked." Mike's heart squeezed. "You shouldn't be worrying about that stuff, kiddo." "Dad, I'm 11, not blind." She finally looked up, her eyes too knowing. "Mrs. Henderson paid you in pie again yesterday, didn't she?" The apple pie sat on the counter, a testament to the small-town economy of favors and faith. Mrs. Henderson's fixed income meant creative payment arrangements, but her pies were legendary, and Mike could never turn her away. Her late husband had been one of his father's first customers. "Her pie is better than money," Mike said, trying to keep his tone light. "Can't deposit happiness in a bank." Sarah's response was interrupted by a knock at the door. It was Joe from the coffee shop next door, holding a paper cup. "Thought you could use this," he said, handing Mike the coffee. "Heard you were up late working on some special bike." News traveled fast in Cedar Grove. Population 3,247, and every one of them connected by an invisible web of information and concern. "Thanks, Joe. Put it on my tab." Joe waved him off. "Consider it community investment. Besides, your daughter's math tutoring is worth way more than coffee." Sarah had been helping Joe's son with algebra, refusing payment just like her father often did. The apple hadn't fallen far from the Turner family tree, At the shop, the morning brought its usual parade of challenges. A transmission that refused to cooperate, a customer arguing about labor costs, and Pete calling again about the parts order. Mike juggled it all while studying Emma's bike's technical drawings, trying to figure out how to modify standard parts to work with the custom system. Turner. The booming voice belonged to Bill Masters, owner of the new dealership in the next town. He filled the shop doorway in his expensive suit, looking out of place among the tools and engine parts. "Got a minute?" Mike's stomach tightened, but he kept his voice neutral. "What can I do for you, Bill?" "More like what I can do for you." Bill surveyed the shop with barely concealed condescension. "This place has history, but times are changing. My offer still stands. You'd make a great addition to our service department. Steady salary, benefits, none of this small-town bartering nonsense." Through the office window, Mike could see Sarah getting off the school bus, pausing to help. Emma, who was making her way to the shop to check on her bike. The girl's laughter drifted through the open door. "I appreciate the offer," Mike said, "but this nonsense is our home." Bill shrugged. "Suit yourself. But when this place finally goes under, don't say I didn't try to help." He left a business card on the workbench. "Offer won't last forever." Sarah entered just as Bill left, her nose wrinkling at the lingering scent of his expensive cologne. "He smells like a magazine," she declared, making Emma giggle. Mike managed a smile, but Sarah wasn't fooled. She hugged him quickly before joining Emma by her bike, their heads together as they examined Mike's progress. The afternoon brought more challenges. The parts supplier called. The specialized. Bearings for Emma's bike would cost more than estimated. The bank sent another reminder. The shop's ancient computer system crashed, taking the day's invoices with it. But there were bright spots, too. Mrs. Henderson brought another pie, this time with a small envelope of cash she'd saved up. "No arguments," she said firmly. "My Harold always said you Turners were too good for your own good." Joe from the coffee. Shop sent over lunch. Payment for Sarah's tutoring. A regular customer stopped by just to help Mike restore the computer files, refusing any compensation. "Remember when you fixed my car on Christmas Eve?" he said. "Some debts you repay in kind." By closing time, Mike was exhausted but oddly hopeful. The stack of bills hadn't gotten any smaller, and the challenges hadn't gotten any easier, but something about watching Sarah and Emma work on homework together while he repaired the bike made it all seem manageable. "Dad?" Sarah's voice pulled him from his thoughts. "Emma's mom called her. She's coming to check on the bike tomorrow." Mike nodded, trying not to think about explaining his free repair decision to someone who could clearly afford to pay. Some things were worth more than money. His father had taught him that, and he was teaching it to Sarah now, one repair at a time. "Then we better make sure it's perfect," he said, picking up his wrench. The girls settled back into their homework, their voices mixing with the familiar sounds of the shop, tools against metal, the hum of the fluorescent lights, the tick of the old clock on the wall, the sound of family, of community, of home. Dawn found Mike already in the shop, his father's old toolbox open beside Emma's bike. The worn leather case still held the tools he'd grown up watching his father use, each one maintained with the same care given to family heirlooms. In many ways, they were exactly that. He lifted out the precision wrench set, remembering his father's words. "Tools are just extensions of your hands, son. But it's your heart that does the real fixing." The morning light caught the worn initials carved into the toolbox's leather. J.T., James Turner, the man who'd built this shop from nothing but determination and trust. The bike's technical drawings were spread across his workbench, covered in his late-night notes. The engineering was elegant but complex, a testament to both necessity and innovation. As he traced the design with calloused fingers, he could almost hear Claire's voice explaining the mechanics. The way she used to break down complex problems into solvable pieces. "Need any help?" Sarah stood in the doorway, school backpack in hand, earlier than usual. "Don't you have school?" "It's only 6:30, Dad." She set her backpack down and pulled up a shop stool. "Besides, I want to learn." Mike smiled, remembering himself at her age, eager to learn every trick his father knew. "All right, Professor Turner, what can you tell me about this system?" Sarah leaned in, her face serious. "The balance compensator uses gyroscopic principles to help Emma stay upright. But it's not just about balance. See how the gear ratio changes based on her leg strength. That's adaptive engineering. Someone's been paying attention to Emma's explanations." "She's really smart, Dad. She knows everything about this bike. She has to. It's part of her." Mike nodded, understanding. In their own ways, they were all part of something bigger than themselves. This shop, this community, these connections that kept them all moving forward. The morning progressed with father and daughter working side by side. Mike showed Sarah how to check bearing tolerances, how to feel for the subtle differences between close enough and exactly right. Every tool from his father's box had a story, and he shared them as they worked. Tales of impossible repairs, of customers turned friends, of the legacy of trust that was as much a part of the shop as its concrete foundation. Emma arrived just before 9, her face brightening at the sight of the partially reassembled bike. "It looks different," she said, running her hand along the frame. "Better different or worse different?" Mike asked, watching her carefully. "Just cleaner, smoother." She tested the pedal mechanism. "The resistance is more even." "That's because Dad spent half the night recalibrating the entire system," Sarah announced proudly. "He said if we're going to fix it, we're going to fix it right." Mike felt his ears redden. "Speaking of which, shouldn't you be heading to school?" Sarah gathered her backpack, but not before giving Emma a quick hug. "See you later. Dad's going to teach me more about adaptive engineering." After Sarah left, Emma stayed, watching Mike work with an engineer's eye. "Mum's going to want to pay you," she said suddenly. "She doesn't like owing people things." Mike paused in his work. "Sometimes the best payment isn't money, Emma. Your mum designed something amazing here, something that gives you freedom. Helping maintain that, that's its own reward." "She designed it after my accident," Emma said quietly. "The doctor said I might not walk again. Mum said that just meant we had to be more creative about movement." She smiled. "She's kind of unstoppable when she sets her mind to something." "Sounds like someone else I know," Mike said, thinking of both Emma and his own daughter. The rest of the day passed in a blur of precise adjustments and careful testing. Mike found himself enjoying the challenge of the specialized work, appreciating the elegance of the design even as he improved upon small details. Each adjustment was a puzzle, each solution a small victory. By late afternoon, the bike gleamed in the shop light, every mechanism moving with quiet precision. Mike ran through the final checks, testing each system against the original specifications. The balance compensator now responded more smoothly. The gear ratios adjusted with butter-soft precision, and the custom braking system engaged with perfect predictability. "Want to test it?" he asked Emma, who had returned after school with Sarah. Emma's eyes lit up. She approached the bike with the caution of someone who had learned to trust gradually, testing each component with careful movements. But soon she was smiling, then laughing as she maneuvered around the shop's open space. "It's better than before," she exclaimed. "How did you—" "Dad's magic," Sarah declared proudly. "Not magic," Mike corrected, "just care. Speaking of which," he turned to Emma. "Your mom's coming tomorrow?" Emma nodded, her expression turning serious. "First thing in the morning. She's flying in from a business meeting." Mike tried to ignore the nervous flutter in his stomach. He'd fixed the bike because it was right, but explaining that to a successful businesswoman, an engineer who would understand exactly how much work he'd done, felt suddenly daunting. "Dad," Sarah's voice was quiet but firm, "stop worrying. You did good work. That's what matters." Mike looked at his daughter, then at Emma testing her bike's smooth operations, and finally at his father's old toolbox. 3 generations of Turners had believed in doing things right, in fixing what was broken, in helping where they could. Tomorrow would take care of itself. "All right then," he said, closing the toolbox with practiced care. "Let's call it a day. I believe someone promised to explain more about gyroscopic principles over pizza." The girls cheered, and soon the shop was filled with the sound of their animated discussion, technical terms mixing with laughter. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the shop's worn sign in shades of gold. Tomorrow would bring what it would, but for now, this was enough. This moment of perfect function, of things working exactly as they should. The morning started like any other until it didn't. Mike was checking Emma's bike one final time when the first vibrations shook the shop windows. The sound came next, a rhythmic chopping that grew louder by the second, drowning out the local radio's morning weather report. "What in the world?" Joe from the coffee shop burst through the door, nearly spilling his latest delivery. "Mike, there's a helicopter. I mean a real helicopter, and they're coming down in Thompson's empty lot." The lot next door had been vacant since Old Man Thompson's hardware store burned down 3 years ago. Now it was serving as an impromptu landing pad for the sleekest helicopter Mike had ever seen. The matte black aircraft descended with precision, its rotors stirring up dust and scattered debris. "Dad!" Sarah's voice carried over the noise as she ran into the shop. "Emma's mom is in a helicopter!" The entire town seemed to materialize on Main Street. Mrs. Henderson abandoned her morning walk, phone already out and recording. Carol from the bank stood in her doorway, mouth agape. Even Bill Masters had pulled up in his luxury car, watching with undisguised interest. As the rotors slowed, a figure emerged from the helicopter. Victoria Hayes moved with the kind of confidence that came from commanding boardrooms and engineering departments. Her tailored suit probably cost more than Mike's monthly mortgage, but it was her eyes that caught his attention. The same determined look he'd seen in Emma's face when she first brought in her bike. "Mom!" Emma was already moving toward the helicopter, her restored bike forgotten for the moment. "You said you were driving down." Victoria Hayes embraced her daughter, then stepped back to examine the bike. "I finished my meetings early and thought, well, I wanted to see this shop for myself." Her voice carried the crisp accent of someone who'd attended the finest schools, but hadn't quite erased their hometown roots. Mike stepped forward, suddenly very aware of the grease stains on his work shirt. "Mr. Turner," he said, extending his hand. "Mike Turner." Victoria's handshake was firm, professional. "Victoria Hayes, I understand you've been working on Emma's bike." "Dad fixed it better than you," Sarah piped up from behind him. "He stayed late and everything." Victoria's eyebrow arched slightly. "Is that so? And the cost for these improvements?" The crowd that had gathered seemed to hold its collective breath. Bill Masters leaned against his car, a smirk playing at his lips. "No charge," Mike said firmly. "Some things are worth more than money." Something flickered across Victoria's face. Surprise? Curiosity? Maybe both. She turned to examine the bike more closely, her engineer's eye taking in every detail. Mike could see the exact moment she recognized the improvements he'd made to her original design. "You modified the balance compensator," she said, "and the gear ratio algorithm. You've improved it." "Just small adjustments," Mike said modestly. "Your original design was brilliant." Victoria ran her hand along the frame, testing each mechanism with expert precision. "These aren't small adjustments, Mr. Turner. This is exceptional work." She straightened up, really looking at him for the first time. "Why wouldn't you accept payment for this level of engineering?" Before Mike could answer, Emma spoke up. "Because he gets it, Mom. He understands what the bike means." The morning sun broke through the clouds then, catching the shop's worn sign. Victoria's gaze followed it, taking in the faded letters, the history evident in every weathered board. "Perhaps," she said slowly, "we could discuss this over coffee? I find myself curious about your approach to engineering and business." From the corner of his eye, Mike saw Sarah and Emma exchange meaningful looks. Joe was already backing toward his coffee shop, grinning. Mrs. Henderson had her phone up again. "Coffee would be fine," Mike heard himself say. As they walked toward Joe's shop, leaving the helicopter and gathering crowd behind, Mike could have sworn he heard his father's old toolbox rattle in approval. Some repairs, after all, led to unexpected destinations. Joe's coffee shop had never seen anything quite like Victoria Hayes. Her designer briefcase rested against the worn Formica counter as she studied the handwritten menu board with the same intensity she'd given Emma's bike. "Just coffee is fine," she said when Joe started listing their specialty drinks. "Black." Mike noticed she'd deliberately set aside her phone, placing it face down in her briefcase. A small gesture, but it spoke volumes about her attention to detail. "So, Mr. Turner, Mike," he corrected, accepting his own coffee from Joe, who was trying his best to look busy while obviously eavesdropping. "Mike," she amended, "tell me how a mechanic in a small-town auto shop developed the expertise to modify complex adaptive engineering." Through the window, they could see Sarah and Emma sitting on the shop steps, heads bent together over what looked like homework. The helicopter gleamed in the morning sun, a sleek anomaly in their small-town landscape. "I wasn't always just a mechanic," Mike said, surprising himself with his openness. "I was 3 years into my engineering degree at MIT when my father got sick. The shop needed someone to run it, and you came home," Victoria finished, something shifting in her expression. "You gave up your degree? Chose something else," he corrected. "Dad had built more than just a business here. He'd built trust, community. That's worth something too." Victoria's fingers traced the rim of her coffee cup, her custom-designed wedding ring catching the light. Mike noticed she still wore it, just as he still wore his. "Emma tells me you're a single parent too," she said quietly. 4 years now? Car accident?" The words were familiar, worn smooth like river stones from repeated use. 2 years for us. Cancer. Victoria's professional facade cracked slightly. "Emma's accident was 6 months after we lost him. The bike, it started as a distraction. A problem I could actually solve. It became more than that," Mike observed. "It became freedom." "Yes?" Victoria looked out at their daughters. "Although I'm beginning to think the engineering was the easy part, the rest of it doesn't come with an instruction manual," Mike finished. "Yeah, I know that feeling." A comfortable silence settled between them, filled with the familiar sounds of Joe's morning regulars and the distant laughter of their daughters. "Your modifications to the compensator system," Victoria said finally. "They're not just technical improvements. You thought about how Emma moves, how she compensates. You saw the person, not just the problem. That's what my father taught me. About repairs. You have to understand what something means to people, not just how it works." Victoria opened her briefcase, but instead of her phone, she pulled out a thick folder. "I've been looking to expand Hayes Engineering's adaptive technology division. We need someone who understands both the engineering and the human element." She slid a business card across the table. "Someone who sees beyond the specs." Mike stared at the card. The salary she mentioned next made him forget to breathe for a moment. "I'm not looking to leave Cedar Grove," he said finally. "I'm not asking you to. We're opening regional offices. The Northeast Division needs a director of adaptive engineering, someone who could work primarily from their own facility, with occasional trips to corporate." Through the window, Mike could see his father's sign, the letters that had guided him home all those years ago. "My shop would become an authorized Hayes engineering facility. Full modernization, expanded capabilities, but maintaining your independence, your community trust." Mike turned the business card over in his hands. "Why?" Victoria's professional mask slipped again, revealing something more genuine. "Because you fixed my daughter's bike without asking for payment. Because you improved my design without trying to prove anything. Because—" She glanced at their daughters. "Because some things are worth more than money. Isn't that what you said?" Before Mike could respond, the shop door chimed. Sarah and Emma burst in, full of excited energy. "Dad! Emma's going to be in my class," Sarah announced. "Her mom's enrolling her in Cedar Grove Middle School." Victoria smiled, a real smile that transformed her entire face. "We have a house here. It's been sitting empty since, well, for a while. Emma needs stability, community. Maybe we both do." Mike looked at the business card again, then at their daughters, then back at Victoria. Two worlds colliding, or maybe just different parts of the same story finally connecting. "The coffee here is terrible, isn't it?" he asked, drawing a surprised laugh from Victoria. "Absolutely dreadful," she agreed, her eyes twinkling. "I suppose I'll have to get used to it." Joe, still pretending not to listen, muttered something about ungrateful sophisticates while failing to hide his own smile. The morning sun streamed through the coffee shop windows, painting everything in shades of possibility. Outside, the helicopter waited like a bridge between two worlds, while inside, those worlds were already beginning to blend. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of activity. While Emma and Sarah explored the town together, Mike found himself giving Victoria a tour of his shop. She moved through the space with curious eyes, taking in everything from the organized chaos of his toolboxes to the ancient computer system on his desk. "Is that Windows 95? She asked, eyebrows raised at the outdated monitor. "It still works," Mike defended, then caught her amused expression. "Most days, anyway." Victoria's attention shifted to a shelf behind his desk, where a row of engineering textbooks sat beside family photos. She pulled one down, dust falling from its pages. "Advanced Mechanical Engineering, MIT Press." Her fingers traced the margin notes. "You weren't just studying engineering. You were excelling at it." Mike took the book from her, memories flooding back. That was another life, was it? She gestured to Emma's bike. "Your work suggests otherwise." Before he could respond, she was moving to the wall of photos. Her eyes landed on one in particular, Mike in his graduation gown, standing between his parents. Claire was there too, her MIT credentials already earned, her smile bright with future promises. "Your wife," Victoria said softly. "She was an engineer too." "Claire," Mike nodded, "we met in thermodynamics class. She always said it was the hottest romance on campus." The old joke still brought a smile, even through the ache. "She worked before, development engineer for an automotive company. She loved it. When Sarah was born, she found ways to work from home sometimes. Said being a mum made her a better engineer, taught her to see problems from new angles." Victoria's professional facade cracked slightly. "James, my husband, he said something similar about being a dad. He was a structural engineer, always telling Emma that the strongest buildings bend with the wind instead of fighting it." They stood in comfortable silence, surrounded by the ghosts of their past lives and the evidence of their present ones. Through the window, they could see their daughters showing Mrs. Henderson how Emma's bike worked, the old woman's face bright with interest. "You know," Victoria said, turning back to the textbooks, "most people assume I inherited Hayes Engineering. They don't realize I built it from scratch while James stayed home with Emma." She ran her finger along the spine of another book. "Everyone thought we were crazy, upending traditional roles like that. But James, he understood that some dreams need space to grow." Mike thought about his own choices, about the dreams he'd set aside and the ones he'd found instead. Sometimes the best dreams are the ones you never planned for. Victoria's eyes met his, understanding flowing between them. She reached into her briefcase and pulled out a tablet, quickly pulling up some files. "These are the preliminary plans for the regional offices. I'd like your opinion. Engineer to engineer." The next hour flew by as they pored over the plans. Mike found himself slipping easily back into the language of his engineering days, offering suggestions and insights that Victoria noted with genuine interest. They were so engrossed that they didn't notice their daughters watching from the doorway. "Mom's smiling," Emma whispered to Sarah, "like really smiling." "Dad's using his big words again," Sarah whispered back. "The ones he only uses when he's fixing really complicated stuff. Victoria looked up, catching them. Instead of her usual professional mask sliding back into place, the smile remained. Girls, perfect timing. We need a practical perspective on this accessibility design. As Emma rolled over to examine the tablet, Mike watched Victoria with their daughters. Her sharp business attire couldn't hide the gentle way she helped Emma navigate the technical drawings, or the genuine interest she showed in Sarah's questions. "You know," Mike said during a pause in their discussion, "there's a great spot for lunch just down the street. Nothing fancy, but they make the best grilled cheese in 3 counties. Let me guess, you fixed their kitchen equipment." Victoria's tone was teasing. "Actually, they fixed me. After Claire, well, sometimes a grilled cheese and a kind word are the best repair tools around." Victoria's expression softened. "I'd like that. The grilled cheese and the company." Behind them, their daughters exchanged knowing looks. The morning sun streamed through the shop windows, illuminating dust motes that danced like possibilities in the air. Outside, the helicopter still drew curious onlookers. But inside the shop, 2 worlds were finding their own kind of balance. Rosie's diner hadn't changed its decor since 1962, and that was exactly how everyone in Cedar Grove liked it. The red vinyl booths still squeaked when you slid into them. The chrome trim still caught the sunlight just right, and the smell of grilled cheese and coffee created an atmosphere that no high-end restaurant could match. Victoria Hayes, CEO of Hayes Engineering, looked surprisingly at home in their corner booth. She'd removed her suit jacket, rolled up her sleeves, and was currently studying the handwritten menu with the same intensity she'd given the engineering plans earlier. "Trust me," Mike said, watching her deliberate. "The grilled cheese with the tomato soup." "That's what Emma said too," Victoria smiled, glancing at their daughters sharing a booth across the aisle. The girls were huddled over Sarah's phone, giggling at something on the screen. Rosie herself came to take their order, her grey hair in its usual neat bun, her lined face lighting up at the sight of Mike. "The usual for you and Sarah." Then, noting Victoria with interest, "And for your friend?" "2 grilled cheese specials," Mike said. "And yes, Rosie, this is Emma's mom." "The helicopter lady." Rosie's eyes sparkled. "Honey, you've given this town more excitement than the time Bill Masters' prize pig got loose at the county fair." Victoria laughed, a real laugh that transformed her face. "I hope that's a good thing." "Best entertainment we've had in years," Rosie winked. "Coffee?" As Rosie bustled away, Victoria looked around the diner, taking in the familiar greetings. Between customers, the way everyone seemed to know everyone else. "This is nice," she said, sounding almost surprised. "Real, different from the corporate lunch scene?" "Very, though I suspect the networking is just as intensive." She nodded toward the counter where several patrons were clearly trying to appear casual while watching them. Mike chuckled. "By dinner time, half the town will know your coffee order and have an opinion on your choice of soup." "Only half?" "I'm disappointed," Victoria teased, then grew more serious. "Emma seems happy here. Already I haven't seen her this relaxed in months." They both watched their daughters. Emma was showing Sarah something on her phone now, their heads close together, comfortable in each other's space like old friends. "Sarah too," Mike said softly. "Since Claire, well, she's had friends, but not like this." Rosie returned with their food, the grilled cheese golden brown and perfect, the soup steaming invitingly. She set down 2 extra pickles without being asked. "For good luck," she said with another wink, leaving them to their meal. Victoria took a bite and her eyes widened. "Okay, you were right, this is amazing." Rosie's secret is the 3 kinds of cheese. And the butter. Mostly the butter. They ate in comfortable silence for a moment, the diner's ambient sounds washing over them, clinking plates, snippets of conversation, the old jukebox playing Patsy Cline. "Your offer," Mike said finally, "about the regional office. You were serious?" "Completely." Victoria set down her spoon. "Hayes Engineering needs to expand its adaptive technology division, and your work on Emma's bike proves you're exactly what we need." Someone who understands both the engineering and the human element. And the part about keeping my shop? Mike, what you have here, this connection to the community, this understanding of what people really need, that's not something you can build in a corporate office. I want to enhance what you've built, not replace it. From across the aisle came the sound of their daughter's laughter. Emma was attempting to dip her grilled cheese in her soup without making a mess, while Sarah demonstrated the proper technique. "Look at them," Victoria said softly. "Emma's never, after her accident, she struggled to connect with other kids. They didn't know how to act around her, but Sarah just sees Emma," Mike finished. "That's what this town is like. People see people, not labels or titles or net worth." Victoria raised an eyebrow. "Or helicopters," Mike countered, making her laugh again. The afternoon sun slanted through the diner's windows, casting long shadows across their table. Outside, Cedar Grove went about its business, but somehow everything felt different. Possibilities hung in the air like the music from the jukebox, familiar but new all at once. "So," Victoria said, dragging her last bite of grilled cheese through, "the remaining soup, tell me more about this pig at the county fair." Back at the shop, Victoria spread out a sleek presentation folder across Mike's workbench, the glossy Hayes Engineering logo, a stark contrast to the worn surface. The afternoon sun filtered through the windows, casting long shadows over the detailed proposals and contracts within. "Full modernization of your facility," Victoria explained, flipping through the pages. "State-of-the-art diagnostic equipment, computer systems, specialized tools for adaptive technology development, plus access to Hayes Engineering's research and development resources." Mike studied the drawings of his shop transformed. The basics layout remained the same, but the additions were impressive. A new wing for adaptive technology development, updated office space, even a small conference room. Yet somehow the plans preserved the soul of the place. His father's old sign still prominently featured, the original brick walls maintained. "You've put a lot of thought into this," he said, noting the attention to detail. "I always do my homework," Victoria replied, then smiled. "Besides, Emma wouldn't stop talking about your shop. She has quite an eye for engineering potential." Through the office window, they could see their daughters in the parking lot. Sarah was showing Emma how to use a basic wrench, both girls laughing as they pretended to fix Sarah's bicycle. "The salary is generous," Mike said, looking at the numbers again. They made his head spin, enough to pay off the mortgage, create a college fund for Sarah, and still have plenty left over. "It's fair compensation for your expertise and experience." Victoria's tone was professional, but her eyes were warm. "We both know you're worth it." Before Mike could respond, the shop door chimed. Bill Masters strode in, his expensive shoes clicking on the concrete floor. He stopped short at the sight of Victoria. "Ms. Hayes," he said, recovering quickly, "I didn't expect to find you here. I've been trying to arrange a meeting with your acquisitions team for months." Victoria's expression cooled several degrees. "Mr. Masters, yes, I recall your proposals. They weren't what we were looking for." Bill's eyes darted between the papers on the workbench and Mike. "I see you're discussing business with Mr. Turner. I should mention that we have our own standing offer for his establishment." "Had," Mike corrected quietly, "and I already declined." "Things change," Bill pressed, "especially when people realize what they're really worth." Victoria gathered her papers with precise movements. "Mr. Masters, Hayes Engineering values innovation, integrity, and genuine community connection. That's exactly what we've found here." She smiled, shark-like. "But thank you for your interest." After Bill left, the tension slowly bled from the room. Mike realized he'd been gripping his father's old wrench like a lifeline. "Sorry about that," he said. "Small-town politics." "I'm familiar with the type," Victoria replied. "Men who mistake money for value." She paused, then added softly, "It's one of the reasons I started my own company. Too many people trying to buy what should be earned." Mike looked again at the proposals, seeing beyond the numbers to what they really offered, a chance to blend his father's legacy with something new, to help people like Emma while staying true to his roots. There would be conditions, he said finally. Victoria raised an eyebrow. Such as? Mrs. Henderson's pies still count as partial payment. Joe's terrible coffee remains our official supplier. And Rosie's grilled cheese becomes the mandatory lunch for all business meetings. A slow smile spread across Victoria's face. Counter-proposal. We add a proper espresso machine for Joe's coffee shop, but keep his regular brew for authenticity. And she added, eyes twinkling, I get to hear the full story about Bill Masters' runaway pig. From the parking lot came the sound of their daughter's laughter. Emma was now showing Sarah something about her bike's specialized gears, their roles reversed, both of them thoroughly engaged in the exchange. One more condition, Mike said, watching them. We keep it real. No corporate politics, no cutting corners. We help people first, worry about profits second. Mr. Turner, Victoria said, extending her hand, I believe we have a deal. As they shook hands, the afternoon light caught the Hayes Engineering logo, making it shine against the worn wood of his father's workbench. Old and new, merging into something unexpected but right. Sarah poked her head in the door. Dad! Emma's! Showing me how the gyroscopic stabilizer works. Can we order pizza and keep working? Mike looked at Victoria, who was already reaching for her phone. I know a great local place, he offered. Of course you do, she laughed. Let me guess. You fixed their oven? Actually, I fixed their delivery car, but the owner's daughter is in Sarah's class, so it's personal, Victoria finished. Everything here is, isn't it? Mike nodded, watching their daughters return to their mechanical exploration. That's what makes it work. Evening settled over Cedar Grove like a soft blanket, bringing with it the kind of quiet that made people speak their truths. The pizza was long gone. The girls had moved their engineering lesson inside, and Mike found himself sitting with Victoria on the shop's small back porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of promise. James would have loved this place, Victoria said suddenly, breaking the comfortable silence. She twisted her wedding ring, a habit Mike had noticed earlier. He always said corporate life moved too fast for real connections. Mike nodded, understanding. His own wedding ring felt heavy on his finger. Claire used to say the same thing. She loved her work, but she worried about Sarah growing up too fast, missing the small moments. From inside came the sound of their daughter's laughter, followed by the distinct clatter of tools being sorted. They were organizing Mike's father's old toolbox, categorizing everything with the precision of young engineers. Victoria pulled an old leather wallet from her briefcase, removing a worn photograph. This was taken 2 weeks before his diagnosis. The photo showed a tall man with Emma's smile, wearing a World's Okayest Engineer t-shirt and holding up what looked like a prototype of Emma's bike. He started the design when we first learned about Emma's condition, said if he couldn't fix everything, he'd at least make sure she could ride with her friends. Mike studied the photo, recognizing the love behind the engineering. Claire was the same way after Sarah was born, always designing little things to make life easier, better. He reached into his desk drawer, pulling out a family photo album. Here, she designed this playground adaptation when Sarah was 3. Said every kid deserved a chance to touch the sky. They exchanged photos like trading cards of memories, each image a piece of the lives they'd lived before. Victoria paused at a picture of Claire in her workshop, surrounded by blueprints and coffee cups. How do you do it? She asked softly. Trust again, I mean. After losing someone who was everything. Mike considered the question, watching their daughters through the window. Emma was demonstrating something with exaggerated gestures, while Sarah doubled over, laughing. I don't think it's about trusting again, he said finally. It's about recognizing that love doesn't end just because the story changed. Claire taught me that every moment matters, even the scary ones, especially those. Victoria's professional mask slipped completely, revealing the vulnerability beneath. When James died, I threw myself into work. It was easier than feeling. Emma's accident, it forced me to slow down, to really see what mattered. But sometimes I wonder if I've forgotten how to just be present, how to let people in, says the woman who flew a helicopter to a small-town auto shop because someone fixed her daughter's bike. That earned him a genuine laugh. Point taken. Although in my defense, I was also investigating a potential business investment. Of course, very professional. Their eyes met in the fading light, understanding flowing between them. Through the window, Emma was now showing Sarah her tablet, probably sharing photos or videos. Their easy friendship was a lesson in letting go of fear. Sarah asked about Claire this morning, Mike said. She wanted to know if it was okay to be happy about new things happening. If it meant she was forgetting her mom. Victoria's breath caught. Emma asked me something similar last week, about James, about moving forward. What did you tell her? That love multiplies, it doesn't divide, that James would want her to embrace joy wherever she found it. Victoria's voice wavered slightly. I just wish I was better at taking my own advice. The setting sun cast long shadows across the shop's back lot, where Emma's bike stood ready for tomorrow's adventures. Mike thought about his father's toolbox, about how some things were meant to be passed down, used, loved by new hands. You know what Claire used to say about engineering? Mike asked. That the best designs leave room for adaptation, for growth. Maybe that's true for hearts too. Victoria looked at him, really looked at him, as if seeing past all the layers of grief and hope and possibility. Your wife was a very wise woman. So was your husband, Mike replied softly. Inside, their daughters had discovered an old photo album, their excited voices carrying through the open window. Dad, Mom, you have to see these. Victoria stood, brushing off her designer pants with an automatic gesture. Shall we go see what they've found? Mike nodded but caught her hand as she turned to go inside. For what it's worth, I think you're better at being present than... You realize... Her fingers tightened briefly around his before letting go. No words needed, just understanding. Sometimes the best engineering happened in the heart. The Cedar Grove Gazette wasn't exactly the New York Times, but Mary Beth Wilson's article about Hayes Engineering's interest in Turner Auto Repair made the front page, complete with a photo of the helicopter that had everyone talking. By morning, the story had spread through town like wildfire, leaving excitement and speculation in its wake. Mike found a copy of the paper on his workbench when he arrived at the shop, no doubt left by Joe with the morning coffee. The headline, Read, Local Auto Shop Catches Eye of Tech Giant, a story of small-town innovation. Your phone's been ringing non-stop, Joe said, appearing with a fresh cup. Carol from the bank came by twice already, and Bill Masters, he looks like he swallowed a lemon. Mike skimmed the article, impressed by Mary Beth's accuracy. She'd captured the essence of the partnership without sensationalizing it, focusing on the potential impact on the community and the importance of maintaining local values. The bell chimed as Mrs. Henderson entered, clutching both a pie and the newspaper. Michael James Turner, why didn't you tell me you were some kind of engineering genius? All this time I thought you were just good with cars. Because he's humble. Victoria's voice came from behind Mrs. Henderson. She stood in the doorway, looking more casual today in slacks and a sweater, Emma's tablet in hand. It's one of the reasons we're interested in the partnership. Mrs. Henderson turned, beaming. Oh, good, you're here too. I brought pie and questions. Many questions. Before long, the shop had turned into an impromptu town hall. Carol from the bank arrived with property assessments and development projections. Joe kept the coffee flowing. Even Rosie stopped by during her break, bringing sandwiches and local business insights. The thing is, Carol was saying, spreading, papers across a workbench, this could change everything. Not just for Mike's shop, but for the whole downtown area. We've been losing business to the bigger towns, but this kind of investment, this validation of local talent, could spark a revival. Victoria finished, studying the assessments. That's partly why we're interested. Small towns often have the best innovations. They just need resources to develop them. Emma and Sarah arrived from school to find the shop transformed into a buzzing hub of activity. They exchanged knowing looks as they watched their parents navigate the excitement together, Victoria handling the business questions while Mike reassured everyone that the shop's heart wouldn't change. "Your dad's famous," Emma teased Sarah. "Your mum's kind of awesome," Sarah replied. "Think they figured that out yet?" The afternoon brought more visitors, more questions, more community members sharing their hopes and concerns. Bill Masters made an appearance, trying to suggest that his dealership would be a better partner for Hayes Engineering, but Victoria's polite dismissal left no room for argument. "Mr. Masters," she said coolly, "we're not interested in erasing local businesses. We're interested in enhancing them. There's a difference." As the day wound down, Mike found Victoria studying his father's old sign through the window. The setting sun made the faded letters glow with renewed purpose. "Having second thoughts?" he asked, joining her. "The opposite," she replied. "Watching you today, seeing how this community comes together, it reminded me why I started Hayes Engineering. It wasn't just about technology, it was about making a difference, one innovation at a time." Through the window they could see Emma showing her bike to a group of curious kids, Sarah proudly explaining the engineering principles they'd been learning. The future of Cedar Grove was taking shape before their eyes, built on a foundation of trust, innovation, and community. "You know," Mike said, "my father used to say that the best repairs strengthen not just the broken part, but the whole machine." Victoria smiled, understanding. Sounds like he was talking about more than just cars. The evening light caught the Hayes Engineering logo on Emma's tablet, making it shine against the worn brick of the shop wall. Old and new, corporate and local, technology and tradition, all finding their balance in this small town that suddenly felt full of possibilities. The crisis came, as crises often do, from an unexpected direction. Victoria was in the middle of a video call with her board of directors when Bill Masters made his move. His dealership had filed a formal complaint with the town council, claiming that Hayes Engineering's involvement with Turner Auto Repair would create unfair competition and damage local businesses. "It's ridiculous," Victoria said, pacing Mike's office. Her tablet displayed multiple emails from concerned board members, "but it's causing exactly the kind of publicity we don't need. The board is nervous." Mike sat at his desk, looking at the drawing Sarah had made the night before. It showed 4 figures in front of the shop, Mike, Sarah, Victoria, and Emma, with the words, "Our family's engineering adventure," written in careful letters across the top. "Maybe Masters is right," he said quietly. "Maybe this is too complicated." Victoria stopped pacing. "What are you saying? You've built something amazing with Hayes Engineering. I don't want to be the reason it faces controversy or loses board confidence." "That's not your decision to make." Victoria's voice held a sharp edge. "We knew there would be challenges, but not like this. Not with people questioning your judgment, your company's stability." "Is that what you think is happening?" Victoria's professional mask slammed back into place. "That I'm letting personal feelings cloud my business judgment?" Before Mike could respond, Emma rolled into the office, her face pale. "Mom, the kids at school, they're saying things about us using Dad's money to buy popularity, about you trying to take over the town." Sarah appeared behind her, looking equally upset. "Billy Masters told everyone his dad said we're trying to destroy local businesses, that we're not really part of the community anymore." Mike and Victoria exchanged glances, their own tension forgotten in the face of their daughter's distress. But before either could speak, Sarah pulled out her drawing and handed it to Emma. "Look what I made last night," she said. "This is what's real, not what they're saying." Emma studied the drawing, then looked up at their parents. Is everything going to fall apart just when it was getting good? The question hung in the air, heavy with more than just business concerns. Victoria moved to comfort Emma, but her daughter wheeled back slightly. "You always do this," Emma said, tears starting. "When things get hard, you retreat into work mode. Just like after Dad died. I don't want to move again, Mom. I like it here. I like having Sarah and Mike in our lives. Victoria's professional facade cracked completely. Emma, honey. She's right, Sarah said suddenly, her voice carrying that same quiet strength she'd inherited from Claire. You both do it. When things get scary, you try to protect everyone by pulling away. But that's not how family works. Dad taught me that. Mike looked at his daughter, really looked at her. She stood straight, chin up, so much like her mother it made his heart ache. Maybe, Sarah continued, instead of deciding what's best for everyone, you should remember why this all started. It wasn't about business. It was about fixing things, making them better. Victoria had gone very still, staring at the drawing, in Emma's hands. James used to say that the best engineering solutions come from unexpected places, she said softly. That sometimes you have to step back and look at the whole system, not just the part that seems broken. Mike picked up his father's old wrench, feeling its familiar weight. Dad always said that the hardest part of any repair isn't the fixing. It's believing that something broken can be made whole again. Different maybe, but whole. So fix it, Emma said simply. That's what you both do, isn't it? Fix things? Sarah nodded. Together, like a family. Mike and Victoria looked at each other over their daughters' heads, really looked at each other, past the business proposals and community politics, past their own fears and protective instincts, to what mattered most. The board meeting is in an hour, Victoria said. Would you both come with me? Help me show them what real innovation looks like. Mike smiled, understanding. Only if you help me show this town what real community looks like. Through the window, they could see Bill Masters getting into his luxury car, probably heading to another meeting about their supposedly unfair advantage. But in the office, surrounded by family photos, engineering drawings, and one very important piece of children's art, something shifted back into proper alignment. Sarah picked up her drawing, carefully smoothing its edges. So, we're not giving up? No, Mike and Victoria said together, then laughed at their synchronicity. Emma grinned. Good, because I have some ideas about adaptive technology that could really shake up Bill Masters' dealership. Emma! Victoria tried to look stern, but failed. What? Dad always said the best revenge is living well and innovating better. The crisis wasn't over. There would be meetings and challenges and adjustments ahead. But as they gathered around Victoria's tablet to prepare for the board meeting, they did it together. Sometimes the strongest repairs come from understanding that broken things don't just get fixed. They get reimagined into something even better. The board meeting took place in Mike's office, his father's old desk serving as command central for Victoria's presentation. The contrast couldn't have been more striking. Victoria's sleek tablet propped against the worn wood, streaming faces of corporate executives into this small-town sanctuary of tools and memories. Ladies and gentlemen, Victoria began, her professional poise perfect but softened by something new. I'd like to show you what real innovation looks like. She gestured to Mike, who rolled Emma's bike into view of the camera. For the next hour, they tag-teamed the presentation, Mike breaking down the engineering principles while Victoria translated them into market potential. Sarah and Emma chimed in with user perspectives, their natural enthusiasm infectious even through the digital connection. This isn't just about adaptive technology, Victoria explained. It's about understanding how innovation happens at the ground level. Turner Auto Repair has something we can't manufacture in a corporate lab, genuine connection to the people we're trying to help. The board members' skepticism gradually shifted to interest, especially when Mike pulled up his modification designs. These improvements weren't developed in a vacuum, he explained. They came from watching Emma, understanding her needs, seeing how she adapted. That's the kind of insight you can't get from market research. And the master's complaint? One board member asked. Victoria smiled. Actually, we have a proposal for that too. She nodded to Emma, who pulled up a new set of designs on her tablet. "We call it the Community Innovation Initiative," Emma said proudly. "Instead of competing with local businesses, we're inviting them to participate in developing new adaptive technologies. Mr. Master's dealership could be part of the solution, if he's willing to think bigger than just selling cars." The board members exchanged looks. Finally, the chairwoman spoke. "Ms. Hayes, when you first proposed this partnership, we had concerns about moving away from our corporate model. But seeing this," she smiled, "sometimes the best way forward is to remember why we started this journey in the first place. You have our full support." After the call ended, celebration erupted in the small office. Sarah hugged Emma, both girls bouncing with excitement. Mike caught Victoria's eye over their daughters' heads, seeing his own relief and joy mirrored there. "We did it!" Emma exclaimed. "Not quite yet," Victoria said, but she was smiling. "Now comes the harder part, bringing the community on board." As if on cue, Joe appeared with coffee and a concerned expression. "Bill Masters is calling an emergency town council meeting tonight." Mike and Victoria shared a look. "Perfect timing," she said. The town hall was packed that evening. Bill Masters stood at the podium, his practiced smile not quite reaching his eyes, as he talked about protecting local businesses and preserving town character. But when Victoria and Mike stepped up to present their Community Innovation Initiative, something in the room shifted. They showed real examples. Emma's bike, yes, but also proposals for adapting local businesses to better serve all community members. The coffee shop could become a testing ground for accessible service designs. The dealership could pioneer adaptive vehicle modifications. Every business in town could be part of something bigger than themselves. "This isn't about Hayes Engineering taking over," Mike explained. "It's about Cedar Grove showing the world how innovation really works, from the ground up, with heart and purpose." "And proper engineering," Victoria added, drawing laughs from the crowd. By the time Emma and Sarah demonstrated some of their own ideas for community improvements, even Bill Masters looked thoughtful. The girls had designed a prototype for making his dealership's showroom more accessible, complete with suggestions for adaptive test drive programs. "Mr. Masters," Emma said, wheeling up to him after the presentation, "my dad always said that the best businesses grow by helping others grow too. Would you like to hear more about our ideas for your dealership?" The tension in the room dissolved, as Bill Masters, caught off guard by Emma's sincere interest, found himself drawn into a discussion about adaptive vehicles with both girls. Victoria and Mike watched from the sidelines as their daughters bridged another gap with simple wisdom and genuine enthusiasm. "They're pretty amazing," Mike said softly. "They take after their parents," Victoria replied, then added with a smile. "All of them." Outside the town hall, the sun was setting behind the mountains, painting Cedar Grove in shades of possibility. The old shop sign caught the light, its worn letters a reminder of where they'd started. But now, instead of endings, everyone was talking about beginnings. Sarah's drawing had been enlarged and displayed at the meeting. Our family's engineering adventure had become something bigger, a community's journey toward a future that honored its past while embracing new possibilities. Sometimes the strongest bridges are built from understanding that every ending is just another way to say, once upon a time. Sunday dinner wasn't usually a formal affair at the Turner house, but today was different. Victoria and Emma had brought containers full of Hayes family recipes, while Mike and Sarah contributed their own traditional dishes. The kitchen counter held an unlikely fusion of culinary traditions. Mrs. Henderson's latest pie sitting next to Victoria's carefully prepared risotto, Sarah's attempt at her mother's lasagna beside Emma's favorite Korean dishes from her father's side. "Dad used to say food was just another kind of engineering," Emma explained, showing Sarah how to properly fold dumplings. "It's all about the right components coming together at the right time." "Mom said the same thing about cooking," Sarah exclaimed. "She called it kitchen chemistry." Victoria, watching them from the doorway, caught Mike's eye. "They're doing it again," she said softly. "Finding connections." Mike smiled. "They're better at it than we are." The kitchen was warm, with more than just cooking heat. Pictures of Claire shared wall space with a new photo of James that Emma had brought over. The past wasn't being replaced, just expanded, making room for new memories alongside the old. "Claire would have loved this," Mike said, adjusting the temperature on the oven. "She always wanted the house full of people and experiments." Victoria nodded, understanding. James, too. He used to say a quiet house was an engineering problem waiting to be solved. The girls had moved on to decorating the table, combining Sarah's handmade place cards with Emma's origami centerpieces. Their chatter filled the house with the kind of energy it had been missing for too long. "Mom," Emma called, "can you help us with this fold? It's the one Dad used to make for special occasions." Victoria moved to help, her usual corporate precision, giving way to something softer as she showed both girls the intricate paper folding technique. Mike watched them, remembering how Claire used to teach Sarah similar things, not just the how, but the why, the story behind each tradition. "The trick," Victoria was saying, "is to understand that each fold affects all the others. Kind of like engineering." Both girls finished, dissolving into giggles. The doorbell rang, and Sarah ran to answer it. Joe stood there with a fresh pot of coffee and his signature grin. "Heard there was a family dinner happening. Thought you might need proper caffeine." "With 2 engineers in the house?" "Always," Mike laughed, welcoming him in. More neighbors followed, each bringing something to share. "Mrs. Henderson with another pie. You can never have too many desserts, dear." Carol from the bank with her famous cornbread. Even Bill Masters stopped by with a bottle of wine and a sheepish smile. "Emma's designs for the dealership's accessibility program. They're actually brilliant," he admitted. "I was wondering if we could discuss implementing them sooner rather than later." The house filled with the kind of warm chaos that only comes from family, both born and chosen. Victoria, who usually hosted catered corporate events in her carefully maintained home, found herself relaxing into the informal atmosphere. She showed Sarah how to make James's signature sauce, while Mike taught Emma the secret to Claire's garlic bread. "Look what I found," Sarah announced, pulling an old cookbook from a kitchen shelf. Its pages were stained and dog-eared, filled with Claire's handwritten notes. "Mom's recipes!" Victoria came to look, running her fingers gently over the handwritten additions. "These aren't just recipes," she said. "They're engineering logs. Look, she's modified everything, adjusted proportions, noted reactions. Just like Dad's notebooks," Emma added, wheeling over. "He used to say cooking was his favorite kind of experimental engineering." Mike watched as Victoria and the girls pored over Claire's cookbook, adding their own notes alongside hers, blending traditions and techniques. The past wasn't being erased, it was being built upon, each memory a foundation for something new. Later, as they all sat around the expanded dining table, the conversation flowed as freely as Joe's coffee. Stories about Claire and James mixed with plans for the future. The girls presented their latest engineering project, a complex Rube Goldberg machine designed to help Emma reach high shelves in the school library. "To family," Victoria proposed, raising her glass. "In all its forms. To engineering solutions," Mike added with a smile. "To everything that brings us together." Sarah and Emma finished in unison. Outside, Cedar Grove settled into its Sunday evening rhythm. Inside, 2 families were becoming something new, not forgetting what they had been, but growing into what they could be together. Sometimes the best family recipes are the ones that leave room for adaptation, for new ingredients that make the whole dish richer. The partnership agreement sat on Mike's desk, its legal language a stark contrast to the comfortable chaos that had become their daily life. Victoria stood by the window, watching Emma and Sarah in the shop below as they worked on their latest project, a modified tool cart that could easily navigate between the old shop's narrow aisles. "The board wants us to formalize everything by the end of the week," Victoria said, her fingers drumming against her ever-present tablet. They're eager to announce the Community Innovation Initiative. Mike nodded, looking at the document that would transform Turner Auto Repair into something bigger than his father had ever imagined. It feels strange, he admitted. Good strange. But still, second thoughts? No, he said quickly, then smiled. Maybe just second glances. Making sure we're not missing anything important. Victoria understood. The past few weeks had been a whirlwind of activity. The shop was already beginning its transformation, with new equipment arriving daily. Bill Masters had become an unexpected ally, his dealership now fully committed to the adaptive vehicle program. The town buzzed with excitement about Cedar Grove becoming a hub for innovative accessibility solutions. But it wasn't just the business that was transforming. Victoria and Emma had moved into their old family house on Maple Street, just 3 blocks from Mike and Sarah. The girls had insisted on helping restore it, turning the renovation into an engineering project, complete with detailed drawings and improvement proposals. Dad would have loved this, Emma said one evening, showing them her designs for making the house more accessible. He always said houses should grow with their families. Sarah had added her own touches, a workshop space in the garage that mirrored Mike's setup, a study area where both girls could work on their projects. The house was becoming a perfect blend of past and future, just like everything else in their lives. Now, looking at the partnership agreement, Mike felt the weight of all these changes. I want to add something, he said finally. Victoria raised an eyebrow. To the legal documents, to the spirit of them. He pulled out a worn notebook, his father's old project journal. Dad used to write down his principles for running the shop. I think they should be part of our foundation too. Together, they read through James Turner's handwritten notes. Every repair is a promise. Every customer is family. Innovation without heart is just machinery. Victoria's professional mask softened. James, my James. He had something similar. She opened her tablet, pulling up an old file. His guidelines for engineering. Design for the person, not just the problem. Solutions should bring people together, not just fix things apart. From below came the sound of their daughter's laughter, followed by Joe's voice offering coffee and commentary on their project. The shop had become a gathering place, exactly as both their families had always believed it should be. We should include them all, Victoria decided. Both our families' principles, woven into the company's mission statement, show everyone that this isn't just a business expansion, it's a continuation of 2 families' legacies. Mike smiled, remembering Claire's similar insistence on keeping the human element in all her engineering projects. The girls will want to add their own principles too. Good, Victoria said firmly. They're the future of this, of everything we're building. As if on cue, Sarah called up from the shop floor. Dad, Mom, come look at what we figured out. They both started at Sarah's casual use of Mom, but Victoria's eyes shone with happy tears. They headed downstairs to find their daughters demonstrating their completed tool cart to an appreciative audience of regular customers. See? Emma explained, showing how the cart could adjust its height. Now everyone can reach what they need, no matter their mobility challenges. And look, Sarah added, pointing to a clever storage system. We used Claire's, organizing principles, but added Emma's dad's color-coding system. The cart was a perfect metaphor for everything they were building, honoring the past while creating something new, making room for everyone's contributions. Mike and Victoria exchanged glances, both recognizing the moment for what it was, another piece of their family's puzzle falling perfectly into place. Later that evening, as they all gathered for their now regular family dinner, Mike pulled out the partnership agreement again. But this time, he also brought out a fresh notebook. Before we sign anything, he said, let's write our own family principles, all of us, together. Emma and Sarah immediately dove into the project, combining Engineering precision with youthful enthusiasm, Victoria added her corporate expertise, tempered now by small-town wisdom. And Mike watched them all, realizing that some partnerships went far beyond legal documents and business plans. The final agreement, when they finished it, contained not just business terms, but family promises. A blueprint not just for innovation, but for building something that would last far longer than any mechanical repair. A family forged from love, loss, and the courage to begin again. The new sign went up on a crisp autumn morning. Turner and Hayes Engineering Solutions, painted in fresh letters beneath the original Turner Auto Repair, Esteur 1985. Mike insisted on keeping his father's hand-painted sign above the new one, a reminder of where everything had started. "Perfect," Victoria said, standing back to admire the effect. "It tells the whole story." The shop itself had undergone a remarkable transformation. The original brick walls remained, but large windows now flooded the space with natural light. The new adaptive technology wing gleamed with state-of-the-art equipment, while the traditional repair bays maintained their comfortable, lived-in feel, like their family. The shop had grown without losing its heart. Emma and Sarah had claimed a corner of the new space as their innovation lab, complete with a workbench sized for their needs and equipped with tools for their increasingly sophisticated projects. Their latest invention, an adjustable mounting system for Emma's tablet, had already caught the attention of Hayes Engineering's development team. "You know what this means," Victoria had said, showing them the email from her R&D department. "You're officially inventors now." The girls had celebrated by designing even more accessibility solutions, their enthusiasm infectious. Their school projects increasingly focused on engineering challenges, earning them a reputation as Cedar Grove Middle School's resident problem solvers. The community had embraced the changes with typical small-town warmth. Bill Masters regularly brought customers interested in adaptive vehicles. His initial skepticism transformed into genuine enthusiasm. Joe had upgraded his coffee shop with accessibility features designed by Emma and Sarah, making it a model for other local businesses. "Who knew my little coffee shop would become a testing ground for innovation?" He'd laugh, serving up his still terrible, but now beloved coffee to a growing crowd of regulars. Mrs. Henderson continued to bring pies, now often accompanied by potential clients who'd heard about the shop's unique approach to adaptive engineering. Her social media posts about their projects had somehow gone viral, bringing attention from unexpected places. "A reporter from Popular Mechanics called," she announced one morning, delivering her latest apple pie. "I told them they'd have to wait in line behind Better Homes and Gardens, and that engineering magazine that keeps calling." Mike and Victoria had developed their own rhythm, both professional and personal. Their different approaches to problems, his practical experience and her corporate expertise, created solutions neither could have developed alone. They worked together seamlessly, whether designing new adaptive technologies or helping Sarah with her math homework. "It's like watching two different programming languages create perfect code," Emma observed one evening, as their parents debated the best approach to a new project. The helicopter still made occasional appearances, but now it was as likely to bring Emma's friends for a sleepover as business executives. Victoria had learned to appreciate the slower pace of small-town life, while Mike had discovered he enjoyed the challenges of corporate innovation. 1 year to the day after Victoria's first dramatic arrival, they gathered in the shop for a celebration. The space was filled with family, friends, and clients whose lives had been changed by their work. Emma demonstrated her latest mobility solution, while Sarah explained the engineering principles behind it. Joe kept the coffee flowing. Mrs. Henderson supervised the distribution of multiple pies, and Bill Masters proudly showed off his dealership's new adaptive test drive program. "Did you ever imagine this?" Mike asked Victoria quietly, watching their daughters hold court among a group of impressed engineers. "Not in my wildest business projections," she admitted, then smiled. "But maybe in my heart." Through the windows, they could see their new sign catching the sunlight. Below it, a steady stream of people entered the shop, some seeking traditional repairs, others looking for innovative solutions, all finding something more valuable, a place where everyone was family and every problem had a solution waiting to be engineered. The girls had drawn up plans for expanding the innovation lab, their ambitions growing with their skills. Their latest project involved creating adaptive sports equipment inspired by a classmate who wanted to join the school baseball team. "Think we can handle getting bigger again?" Mike asked, reviewing their drawings. Victoria looked around at their blended family, their transformed shop, their growing community. "I think," she said, taking his hand, "we can handle anything as long as we keep engineering it together." The autumn sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating their world of endless possibilities. In the end, the biggest innovation wasn't in the technology they created, but in the family they had built. One careful design, one loving repair at a time. A year later, the annual Cedar Grove Community Innovation Fair transformed the town square into a showcase of possibility. Beneath a banner reading, "Where Heart Meets Engineering," Emma and Sarah stood proudly beside their latest creation, a universal adaptive sports equipment system that had already been approved for patent by Hayes Engineering. "Mum and Dad would be so proud," Sarah said softly to Emma, touching the small photo of Claire and James they'd incorporated into their display. "They are proud," Emma replied, adjusting her position in her newly upgraded mobility chair, her own design naturally. "Dad always said the best engineering connects people. Look around." The square was filled with evidence of their family's impact. Bill Masters demonstrated adaptive vehicles to interested customers. Joe served coffee from his fully accessible mobile cart. Mrs. Henderson judged the Youth Innovation Contest, her famous pies now featuring custom-designed plates that made them easier for everyone to enjoy. Mike and Victoria moved through the crowd hand in hand, stopping to talk with visitors and old friends alike. Their wedding rings, new but designed to honor the old, caught the sunlight. The ceremony had been small, held in the shop with their daughters as best engineers. "Ready for the announcement?" Victoria asked, squeezing Mike's hand. He nodded, looking at the gathered crowd, their extended family of blood, choice, and circumstance. Sarah and Emma joined them at the podium, all four wearing matching Turner and Hayes engineering shirts. "Today," Victoria began, "we're not just celebrating innovation, we're celebrating community, family, the power of believing that every problem has a solution if you just have the heart to find it." Mike took over, his voice carrying across the square. "Thanks to the success of our Community Innovation Initiative, Hayes Engineering is establishing the Claire Turner and James Hayes Foundation for Adaptive Engineering. Every year, 2 Cedar Grove students will receive full scholarships to study engineering with guaranteed internships at our shop." The crowd erupted in cheers. Emma and Sarah hugged, their dreams of attending MIT together one step closer to reality. As the sun set over Cedar Grove, the four of them sat on the shop's back porch, their favorite spot for family meetings. The old sign and the new one stood together against the darkening sky, telling their story to anyone who knew how to read it. "You know what Dad used to say about engineering?" Emma asked, looking at the stars. "The best solutions," Sarah started, "are the ones that bring people together."